I'd always been a bit up and down throughout my teens. I got diagnosed with depression when I was at uni, and I just thought that had reared itself because obviously moving and kind of new events. And I'd always wondered if something was wrong, but I just didn't know for sure, and I didn't know that it carried any risks, particularly not for obviously having children. So,
well, so you were living in Africa at the time. You were doing charity work, the pair of you together. You're 26. You find out you're pregnant, and the pregnancy was not plain sailing at all. I mean, the first trimester, really quite serious moments when you didn't know whether she'd make it through.
Yeah, I mean, I found out I was pregnant on the back of malaria, and so was a bit stressed. It wasn't kind of how thought I'd find out about the first baby that I was going to have. Yeah. And then ended up getting a UTI. I'm a paediatric nurse, so I had to inject myself with antibiotics. And then I got food poisoning, and that was all in the first trimester. So
really stressful. Really stressful. And do you think that maybe some of the stress that she was going under at the time possibly could have contributed to what happened afterwards?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've noticed certain triggers with Hannah, and when she has prolonged stress, it can trigger her mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that really was the start of...
Well, on the 11th of March 2015, Hannah comes along, happy and healthy for the first few weeks, and then her health deteriorated as well, didn't it? What happened to her?
So at 6 weeks, she had sort of symptoms of being floppy and unresponsive and having temperatures, and being a paediatric nurse, my head started to spin. And the first hospital we went to, we didn't really have much luck with the diagnosis, and they weren't particularly kind to me. And so Andy started to doubt whether or not it was in my head as well. And I eventually took her to another hospital where I'd previously worked, and we got a diagnosis of an E. coli UTI, but it took 4 weeks, and by then I'd not slept properly. I was stressed, and I'd started to question if it was in my head. So.
And so when, Andy, did you first notice that moment where you think, oh, no, this isn't right?
I would say around about that time, actually, when Hannah was getting really restless and lacking sleep, and she was up at all times of the night, and she started saying some strange things that made me think, OK, this is different, it's not...
You were watching telly, weren't you? It was Saturday night.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
What did she say?
So this is following Esther's admission to hospital, and Hannah was saying things like, Britain's Got Talent. She, I can't remember the guy's name. Peter Lambert. She said, he's a really nice guy, and I think I want to marry him. And I thought, OK, that's strange. And following on from that, she started saying even more strange things. And then that was the weekend that she really deteriorated, and she curled up in a ball and started screaming.
Well, this is because it got really sinister, and in this premise, you believed that you were God yourself, and then you believed that your baby was going to die, and then at 12 o'clock the next day the baby was going to die, and then the baby would come back to life again. So the minutes leading up to this 12 o'clock moment was when you collapsed, because for you this is real, and you think your first child, your newborn, this most precious thing, has died. I mean, awful, really awful. So what did you do? Because you didn't know about postpartum psychosis, you hadn't been diagnosed with it at this time. So what did you think was going on?
I didn't really have a concept of the fact that I was behaving abnormally. I remember getting stroppy around the Britain's Got Talent thing with Andy and my dad, because I felt I was having some kind of divine intervention and they couldn't see what I could see. And when I was on the floor, I remember even Andy showing me that she was alive, but I was so trapped in fear I just couldn't stop screaming, and I remember wanting to stop, but I just physically couldn't. And then it was a family friend that got me off the floor and said, you need to get up because you're going to end up physically unwell as well. She said, you're really sick, Hannah. And that's when I thought, actually, she's right.
Well, that made you voluntarily check into a mental health unit, and there was a horrible week of mania and suicidal thoughts. You escaped 3 times, tried to kill yourself, very nearly succeeded, and then the decision was made to section you. And that, you say, was actually what saved your life?
Yeah, so I was sectioned, and they put me up on the adult unit for 4 days away from Esther, and because I was so deluded and hallucinating, I didn't realise she was gone, but one of the carers said that she heard me on the 4th day screaming, where's my baby? And that's what made them bring me back down to the mother and baby unit. Being in that environment is what's made our bond so strong. And actually medication wasn't working for me, so I had ECT in the end, and that is what saved my life.
ECT being?
Electric convulsive therapy, so they induce a seizure. We took part in a documentary February last year called My Baby Psychosis and Me, and I allowed them to film that because I wanted to break the stigma around it.
And how are you now?
The most well I've ever been, to be honest with you, I think I probably haven't been well since I was 13, and since getting the diagnosis of bipolar after all the psychosis, being on a mood stabiliser as well as an antidepressant has literally transformed my life.
And for a long time after that, both of you as a couple decided that maybe you'd be more anxious about having another child for understandable reasons. But as you sit here now, you are currently 23 weeks pregnant with a little boy on the way. So congratulations. Are you, because there is a 50% chance that this could happen again. So you obviously have spoken about that as a couple. Do you feel prepared for what might happen this time?
Yeah, I think thanks to Dr. Alan Gregoire, he was Hannah's psychiatrist, and fantastic. You know, he really helped us through the whole process, and Hannah was in Melbury Lodge in Winchester, and the staff there were great, and I think having that reassurance that if it happened again, she would be well looked after.